this lesson, we're going to learn how to automatically refresh our list component whenever data changes by creating a new tchotchke. Now, what's interesting about this is the kind of thing that starts making you think differently about RxJS. You might look at it and say it's a really complicated API and there's a lot going on, a lot of operators, but they all are in the service of getting streams of data to update or notify other subscribers. Right now, here's the issue, right? We've got this form. We put stuff in the form and we hit create new. That's great. Something happened, clearly, but we don't see it unless we hit refresh and reload the whole app. How could we communicate between these two components, this list component on the left and this form component on the right? Well, there's a couple of ways. Maybe what we do is we could emit a message upward to the container component, and then from that container component, we could then try to figure out a way to change an input in the list component to cause it to load again. But doesn't that feel kind of like a big hack? It does to me, because then you'd have to have some sort of indicator property that's an input on the list that you subscribe to changes of. Once that changes, you reload. Why do we need two components to coordinate to do that? It turns out there's a very simple way to do it. We can build this in to our service itself. And so, for example, we can come in here and in our service, we can define a property and a synthetic getter for it, which really makes this thing cool. So now what we have is we have a new thing, a new observable that we're creating. And I've imported it already, the keyword subject, the constructor subject. The subject constructor creates a new observable that you can emit values from. So you have your own little private observable that can output content. And we need this to be kind of a momentary, if anyone subscribed, let that particular component know, or service, that something has happened. And that something could have data, in which case we would give it a type in here. But in this case, I just want to even prove that it's just the fact that we've been notified of the event, of the observable stream moment. I can make it a void. So anytime we notify, the subscription wakes up and does something. And I could have anything that actually operates on the collection, any REST call that does something, let's say like the create. I could have one of its side effects be to send the next emitted event from the refresh needed observable. Now the reason I did this is private underscore refresh needed $, and then I said get refresh needed $. As a synthesized getter is that way nothing can overwrite that with a new implementation. I can't do another new on underscore refresh needed. I can just give a reference to it back. And that's why I did that. So that's kind of nice and useful. But now I've got this thing that I could use by calling the property refresh needed dot and get that information and cause it to reload the list whenever the service says that something changed. Now the second part of this is that we can take a look at the post operation here. And we can not only post, but we can use a new operator called tap. And so now what we have is we've got a post event that happens with our HTTP client. So whenever we create our tchotchke, we're going to call that HTTP client.post. And as a side effect of that, whenever we do that call and subscribe to it, we're going to send a tap operation through, and the tap operation will basically let us change something in the tchotchke service, and we can call the refresh needed $ next method, which triggers the next subject hit. Sounds a little complicated, but if you think about it, every time we do a post, we're going to emit a value from refresh needed and give it as a property without the underscore to our component. In addition to this work here, what we can do is we can say this.tchotchke service.refresh needed. See, it looks like a regular property. .subscribe. And whenever we get that, we don't care what the value is. We just care that it happened. We can say this.tchotchke. Now at this point, you're looking at that and saying, well, we already have that down below. Hopefully you're thinking, why don't you build a method for it, Ken? So I will. So I'll say private get all tchotchkes. And in that one, we will get all tchotchkes.subscribe. So now both in the subscription to refresh needed and just as a bootstrap, we can call the get all tchotchkes. And let's take a look at that fine piece of code, he says with sarcasm. The use case is, we still have our data left over from before, but that doesn't matter. Whenever we do something, now we actually get the refresh, and that's it.
I hope you find these useful. And if you're looking for on-site training, advice, mentoring, or technical help with any area of your full stack development efforts, head over to chariotsolutions.com to check out our services. Thank you.